Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Chaos in Kenosha. I love how our media does that. You got to have those cute little catchy lines. Chaos in Kenosha. There was a little bit of chaos today as there was pizza. Evidently, there was pizza. Someone tried to extend the olive branch or a slice of pie, and it ended in some a little scuffle. Nothing crazy, but blown way out of proportion. But as I was sitting watching the video, and look, nothing today happens without somebody videotaping it, and getting their clicks. Look, you got to get your clicks. It's got to happen. That's the media game these days. As I'm watching this video, and I'm just going, I'm confused at all of these folks that this is something that we're going to literally fight each other over, that neither of them have control over. This is the weird part of this. Nobody in those crowds on either side has any say in what's happening. They're spectators ready to commit more chaos, it seems. And I give whoever brought these several pizzas to the steps there of the courthouse in Kenosha to try and reach across the divide of the Black Lives Matter groups and the lunatics on the other side. I give them credit for trying. I do. But here's the weird thing, even in that, there had to be arguing and there had to be fighting, and irrationally on grounds that are quite scary. Because I'm looking at this moment, and I'm looking at what Kyle Rittenhouse is on trial for, and it's one of those things where these environments, and we've always had protests, and we've always had these heated kind of discussions, and this heated rhetoric, and this yelling expletives at each other. We've always had that, and that is the sign of a free society. You have the right to scream at somebody, and they have the right to scream back. But as I'm watching these videos and I'm watching the back and forth, my mind keeps coming to this place of the reason that they're out there is this kid, I can't call him a kid, he's an adult. This adult went to a place where violence was going on, knew there was going to be violence, and I would even argue, now this is speculation on my part, wanted to see violence so that he could interject himself in the middle of this, that he could be the hero. Because I know people like this. They can't be cops, so they become security guards. They can't do that, so they adorn their car with everything to make it look like a police car. So people think they're important. Those people scare me. And as I'm watching this unfold, and I'm watching this video, my mind then goes to the guy on trial, this Rittenhouse on trial for what he did. What's it going to take now? Because, hey, that person yelled at me. That person knocked the sign out of my hand. I'm now in fear for my life. I now have to shoot them. This is the part that nobody's really talking about. To be honest, do I care whether Rittenhouse goes to jail or not? No, not really. I want justice served. But how are you going to get justice? There are two people dead. Will you ever get true justice? Now, we've demonized one of the people because evidently he has a past, but nobody knew that when Rittenhouse pulled the trigger. And the person who was shot thought that Rittenhouse was an active shooter. You can hear the people saying they think it's an active shooter. They now have to stop what they believe is a mass shooter. And in the chaos of these moments, adding the gun, and I keep coming back to this, and look, I am not a gun grabber by any stretch of the imagination, but by by bringing these guns into this environment, you are creating even more chaos. Because understand, sorry, no matter what you say, guns do not de-escalate a situation. They only ramp them up. And, as I've said before, I had a friend years ago who was a policeman who said, look, you get into an argument, you get into a fight, and you got a gun, and you pull it out, you better be ready to use it because somebody's going to take it from you. And then they're going to use it on you. It only escalates the violence. So in this moment, with the backdrop of the Rittenhouse trial, with the backdrop of the Ahmed Arbury trial, with the backdrop of the violence that was going on in Charlottesville, what does Ohio do? Well, they decide, we're going to scrap the carry permit stuff. Yeah, anybody can carry a gun, whatever they want. You don't need any stinking training. You don't need to know what a gun is. No, anyone can carry anything they want because we believe in guns. And look, and oh, by the way, teachers in Ohio now, if DeWine signs this, they'll be able to pack heat in the classroom, and nobody's allowed to know about it. They can carry a concealed weapon in the classroom. Oh, I can see that going really well. But Pennsylvania, not to be outdone by any stretch of the imagination, they went and said, no, what we're going to do is we're going to lower the age down from 21 down to 18, and yes, we're going to do away with restrictions on a permit. So anybody can do it. Don't even need a permit. And you go, does it seem we're heading in the wrong direction? When you talk to anyone who is semi-lucid about what happened in Kenosha, the majority of people that I've spoken to go, the guy showing up with a gun was probably a bad idea. In fact, the guy showing up at all was probably a bad idea. This was a job for law enforcement. This is a job for people who are trained in this. This is a job for the people that we pay to do this. Not for vigilantes, not for people who are, we're going to go and show our hero complex. This is a job for policemen. And the trial, as it's going down the road, I'm not hearing the discussion yet of, should we have people showing up in these environments, armed to the teeth, looking for trouble? And I point to the Ahmed Arbury trial, which one of the things that I found most ridiculous is one of the guys, one of the McMichaels, claimed that he was in fear for his life. Now, this guy and his father are driving after this black man who's in a jogging suit out for a jog. Somehow he feared for his life so much that they had to shoot this guy. Even though the guy never threatened him. And the person who testified, the shooter who testified, said that Arbury didn't threaten him in any way before he pointed his shotgun at him. Now, the old adage goes like this. You run from a knife, you charge a gun. Someone pulls a gun on you, you've now just ramped up, you've escalated this situation. Someone pulls a gun on me, what choice do you have but to attack? What choice do you have but to fight for your life? Because that one pull of the trigger, you're a dead man. So pulling the gun in this moment, introducing the gun in this moment, is the worst possible outcome. Now, if these two idiots, father and son, don't have guns, if they're not packing, do you think they follow this guy? Do you think they hunt him down? Or do you think they call the police and go, hey, I think we saw the guy who was in that house that we were worried about. We'll stay back here and wait for you to come get him, but we'll point him out. Because that's how it used to be. But now we got all these cowboys who they've seen way too many Rambo movies. and how it's going to be their turn to be the hero. They're going to get their 6.5 minutes on the evening news about how they thwarted the criminal and how they used their big gun to do it. It's insane. And I don't know if it's our media culture that does this. I don't know if it's social media that encourages the dim to pick up arms and think that they're going to interject themselves into some kind of hero scenario. I don't know if it's the dim who think that they can say and do anything they want until someone calls them on it. That, got to defend myself. When I was a kid, you said something stupid, you got beat up. And you know what happened? You didn't say anything stupid again. You started a fight. I'm thinking about this, the Zimmerman case, and I go back to the Zimmerman thing. That's when a lot of this craziness really started to amp up. Because the right response to George Zimmerman shooting that kid was him going to jail. Because he started the fight. He's the one who instigated it. And when he started to get his butt kicked, then he's like, oh, I'm in fear of my life now. Now I got to shoot this kid. And they let him off. Again, 20 years ago, he doesn't get off. He goes to jail. But the gun fetishists, the NRA folks, they've pushed for these stand your ground laws, these castle doctrine laws, these things that say, no, you don't have to try and retreat. Use maximum force. Even if you started it. Now look, if someone breaks into your house, you defend yourself. If someone is attacking you, you defend yourself. But here's the thing. If you started it, and I go back to what my mother always said, if you start the fight, don't come crying to me when you get beat up. This is what mothers of my generation were telling their children. Don't come crying home if you get beat up if you started it. If you threw the first punch and you got beat up, you deserved it. Where's that generation? But this Arbury case is just mind-blowing to me. And it's gotten almost no coverage. You got a defense attorney saying there are far too many black pastors in this courtroom. We need less black pastors in a courtroom of a black man being killed by two white guys. Where do you think they're going to be? And then to put the defendants on the stand and say, well, I was afraid. I was afraid for my life. It's crazy. What's interesting, though, is all of these trials, the Rittenhouse trial, the Charlottesville, that Unite the Right civil trial, that's coming to a head. They're going to be hearing closing arguments soon. The Arbury trial, closing arguments, I think Monday maybe. So by Thanksgiving, we could have all three of these wrapped up. And who knows, maybe riots in the street for Thanksgiving. Because that's what, as I'm watching these videos in Kenosha, I'm going, why are these people here? Is the point that whoever wins or loses, because that's the reason they're there. It's not about justice for the people who are there. It's so that they can throw a fit. And that the other side can counter throw a fit. And then when they start going back and forth, they start shooting each other. And we're right back where we freaking started from. It's nuts. Nuts. And yet we've got Republican politicians saying, no, we don't need any more gun restrictions. No, we need to make it easier for people to go to these things and carry firearms and have them concealed. No, we need 18-year-olds to be able to carry guns wherever they go. There's a brilliant idea. Because look how it's working out for this guy in Wisconsin. Although he wasn't 18, to be fair, he was short of 18. But you go, at what point do we stop the insanity? Now, like I said, I'm not a gun grabber, but you have to have some sane, thoughtful regulations. Background checks, not a bad idea. Permits to carry concealed weapons, I don't think are too onerous. And maybe how easy it is to get a gun. Maybe we should stop that. And don't get me started on these ghost guns that you can order all the pieces. They'll come together. They'll give you a little kit, and you can now become a gunsmith. And now you have a completely untraceable firearm. That's how lax and insane our rules are. And our Republican friends only making it worse. And it's not rooted in, I don't believe it's rooted in belief. I believe it's rooted in fear. Fear of their voting constituents who will throw them out because they have been trained like Pavlovian dogs to, whenever you mention the word guns, they start to salivate. Blah, blah, blah. I might get to shoot somebody. They get all warm and fuzzy in the trousers. It's crazy. And where does it end? You know, I often say that the country started going to pot when they stopped letting little 5-year-old boys beat each other up in the recess line. As soon as on the playground you stop letting kids knock each other around to learn how to interact with each other. This is where we went wrong. Because what ends up happening is you get all this pent up anger, this just insanity, and then they explode. And then you get this Rittenhouse kid who's going to go to a place because I'm going to stop the violence. I've seen the movies. I'm going to live the fantasy. Nuts. Also, Ohio has turned into a crazy state as well. Ohio is moving forward on their gerrymandering plot. Yeah, because look, they've got no really good ideas. More kids with guns. There's a great idea. They are moving forward on their gerrymandering. Evidently, in 2018, the voters of Ohio passed a ballot measure that said that they wanted to have some say in how the maps are drawn. They wanted to put some guardrails up, as they said. Well, the Republicans there in the state of Ohio are saying, what finger is the one? That middle one? Yeah, that's what you voters are getting, the middle one. We're going forward, and we're going to go on our own. And what we find out is that the number of districts that Republicans will end up controlling is some insane number. And I think someone told me it was like 13 of the 15 districts are going to go to Republicans. Whereas you're talking about a state that's, 45% Democrats, where if you had, properly driven maps, you might be, you might be 6 of 15 going to Democrats instead of 2. Yeah, that's what gerrymandering gets you. That is what gerrymandering gets you. And that's the only way they can win. Amazing stuff. Lots to get to. Going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
More American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1993. That was the day 21,000 attendants, mostly women, caught American Airlines by surprise in their first strike ever against the company. 80% of all flights were canceled a week before Thanksgiving as solid picket lines formed at 40 airports across the country. CEO Robert Crandall, who commanded $1 million a year salary and preferred the nickname Fang, was at a loss when flight attendants refused to be bullied by threats of scab replacements. Hoping to smash seniority and scheduling rights, he canceled all vacations for months. Crandall's claims to company losses could hardly be believed after the company reported third-quarter profits of $118 million. Attendants were fed up with years of concessionary contracts that reduced their wages by as much as 40%. One woman picketer summed up the company's attitude saying, quote, "We're just a bunch of skirts." The strike was so popular that pilots and Teamsters often joined picketers. In New York City, 200 members of Local 1199 hospital workers walked the picket line in solidarity. Fed up machinists at United Airlines in Denver were so inspired they staged a solidarity sick-out the first day of the strike. 4 days later, President Clinton intervened to end the strike and force binding arbitration. While many saw this as a victory, workers returned to the jobs under the same conditions that forced them to strike while they waited for arbitrators to render a decision. 2 years later, arbitrators finally rendered that decision.
decision. They awarded American the right to reduce staffing level on some flights, but flight attendants would win a 17% wage increase and retain most work rules.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So some craziness going on up in New Hampshire as the Republican governor, Chris Sununu, up there has basically chastised this group. What's their name? Moms for Liberty. Yeah, evidently Moms for Liberty. They have put a bounty on teachers who teach that theory about critical something or other, race something, that what is it, race critic? I don't know. Put $500 bounty on those teachers who dare to talk about anything that they don't believe in. Because look, the state of New Hampshire passed a law not long ago prohibiting teaching children that they are inferior, racist, sexist, or oppressive by virtue of their race, gender, or other characteristics. I don't know what all of that quite means, but somehow we shall have bounties. Crazy. But hey, good on Sununu. I got to be honest, one of the few Republicans to come out and denounce this nonsense. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on what's going on in the classroom, because there is a war on public school teachers, and there has been for a very long time. They've been slinging arrows at our educators for far too long. That's why I've asked Scott DiMauro to come talk with us. Scott's the president of the Ohio Education Association, OEA. Scott, thanks for taking time for us.
Good to be with you, Rick.
So what do you think of this? Bounties on the head of those evil teachers who teach kids about history. How dare they?
I mean, it just shows how far this coordinated disinformation campaign has gone. You tell lie after lie after lie, and people start believing it, and they're tripping over each other to try to, outdo each other. It does show fundamentally that people on the extreme right don't want to talk about the realities of race, don't want to respect the important work that educators are doing in our classrooms to keep learning going through very, very difficult times. The good news for me is that, as we look at where the majority of folks are, particularly in our state, I think they're on the extreme. They're outside the mainstream. Most people believe in their teachers, believe in their public schools, know their public schools are doing a good job. And in fact, based on some polling that we just did in Ohio, they believe our schools are underfunded and they want to do more to support our schools. So it's unfortunate, though. It's part of the larger culture. And for some reason, the right wing has decided that education is going to be where they're going to make their mark. And I think they're going to fail miserably.
Well, it's a good place to scare people. I mean, you look at what happened in Virginia, and what they did is they took the poorly educated, which according to Donald Trump, who he loves quite well, and they scared them that there's this theory out there. We don't really know what it is, can't explain it, but there's a theory, and it's about race. And we're told it's somewhere being taught, probably not in my school, but we've got to be afraid of it. And it motivated people because fear works.
It does. And sadly, we have legislation that's pending in the Ohio legislature that would also criminalize the promotion of divisive concepts related to race. It would impose penalties on school districts by cutting funding if teachers are saying things that offend people in such a way that they think violates the law, which, by the way, is so ambiguously written. It is a litigator's dream. This is how you're going to really just advance the legal profession and allow them to make a lot of money. It would penalize teachers with threatening the loss of their license. It would, threaten kids by saying that if you're in a course where these issues come up, you're not going to get academic credit for it. And the reality is that our members are just working as hard as they possibly can to teach the curriculum that they've been trained to teach. I'm a 30-year social studies teacher myself. I went into this profession because I believe that we have an obligation to create good citizens in our democracy, to teach people to be good critical thinkers and problem solvers. Throughout my teaching career, I have never had parents complain about what I do in the classroom. I teach, you know, a balanced approach. I teach kids to see both sides. I teach kids to understand the truth. And unfortunately, when you talk about the truth related to race in this country, the truth related to oppression, the truth related to really the raw deal that a lot of people in this country get, it makes some people uncomfortable. And so the right wing is exploiting that, pushing fear, and it's all about advancing political power for them.
No, I know. I've been asked about this because we've got kids in public schools, and don't you care? No, I want my kids to learn history. I want them to learn what actually happened. Do I know lots of bad things happen? Absolutely. Do I say, yeah, bad things happen? I didn't do it, so I don't know how it's an inflection on me, but I don't want it to happen in the future. So, you know, we learn from the past and we make sure we don't do it again. That doesn't seem that hard to me.
Totally. I mean, you know, sometimes, you know, there are people that want to paint with broad brushes. You know, they claim that they have a monopoly on patriotism, a monopoly on, you know, love for country. You know, I love my country. My colleagues love our country. And if you love your country, then you want to make sure that you understand what's wrong and you fight like hell to make it better. That's how we've made progress throughout our history.
Right.
That's how we ended slavery. That's how we advanced the civil rights movement. That's how the labor movement was born. It was by recognizing injustices in the system and working hard to overcome them. So, you know, it's out of our love for our nation that we do this work, and shame on anybody who suggests otherwise.
So let me ask you the other question here. You said you've been doing this over 30 years. If you're a young teacher, you're that young teacher that 30 years ago got into this. Do you do this now?
That's a really good question. And that's what worries me most about the direction that things are going. We already are facing a shortage of education professionals. And you know, we talk about the substitute teacher shortage that we see everywhere, shortage in other critical personnel. But fundamentally, we don't have enough people anymore choosing education as a profession. It's the most noble profession in our society. Yet, because of a variety of factors, because teachers have traditionally been underpaid, and through our work in the labor movement, we've worked very hard to close some gaps. But historically, that's been the reality. Because we have really misguided policies at the national and state level across the country that put so much focus on standardized test scores and labeling and shaming and blaming teachers and schools and districts rather than instilling a love of learning in our kids. You know, we put so much focus on testing that we suck the joy out of teaching and learning in our classrooms. And then you layer on top of that this really chilling environment that's being created over these debates over race and equity and diversity. It is going to be harder to attract people into the profession at a time where more than ever before, given the challenges that we face as a society, we need the best going into education.
So am I taking that as a yes, you would do it, or a no, you would not?
That was my dodge. I hope I would. I mean, I haven't lost even after 30 years, even in the middle of all this stuff, I still believe that it is the best job in the world. I still believe that it's the most noble profession. I would do it. But I understand why some people are choosing not to. And one of the things that we're really working hard to do is to advocate for the kinds of support systems, advocate for fair compensation, advocate for mentoring and training, and really making sure that people see the good in this work. And you know, it breaks my heart when I hear about people that want to leave, but then I am lifted up every day by people that are choosing to go into education as a profession, and because they really want to make a difference in the lives of kids.
No, I give my kids' teachers all the credit in the world, and we always have. They've always been fantastic. They've always been willing to help. Always been just the best quality people that you would come across. And look, I'm envious of their ability to keep 20, 30, 40, 50 kids on task in a giant room when I can't do it with simply 3.
I was my career teaching has been in high school social studies, and when my daughter was in kindergarten, I had the good fortune at that time I was a full-time release local union president in my community, and so I was able to spend time in schools doing different things, and every week I volunteered in my daughter's kindergarten classroom, and I had a table of 6 5-year-olds that I was responsible for an hour. And I told the teacher, I said, how do you do this with 24 kids all day long? It just blows my mind. Yeah, teachers do amazingly heroic work. And it's never been more true than over the last year and a half through this pandemic.
Oh, absolutely.
Teaching through a mask, teaching through a computer screen, adapting to all kinds of changes. It's been pretty amazing.
No, I'm right there with you. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Scott DiMauro. He's the president of the Ohio Education Association, OEA.org, their website. We'll get links out on social media how you can check that out. But here's the thing, Scott. Right here in our area, the Scranton Federation of Teachers, they're on strike. They haven't seen a raise in more than I think it's 5, possibly 6 years. We've seen, constant attacks on education across not just Pennsylvania, not just Ohio, but across the country, and deep and painful cuts in education where we get the rhetoric from politicians. Our children are our most important resource. We're investing in the future. Yet they keep cutting the funding, handing it off to corporate interests, and then expecting miracles from teachers. I got to tell you, I'm not surprised there hasn't been a mass exodus, because as one person sent me, I make more money now as a bartender than I made as a teacher. And when I'm done bartending, my day is over. When I was a teacher, I went home and grading papers and dealing with all kinds of problems and dealing with all kinds of, kids and their stories and their family conditions. It's an awful lot for someone to make, just above poverty wages, I think.
Yeah, and too many of our teachers are working in communities where the schools are underfunded. Ohio is similar to Pennsylvania in that, we have a very inequitable system of funding schools. We've been advocating really hard to try to make sure that the resources are there across the board and that there's more equity in terms of how those resources are distributed. But when you depend primarily on local property taxes, which depends on local property values, then you're going to have these inequities, and that's just unjust. Layer on top of that this expansion of charter schools. In many states, you have taxpayer dollars that are being diverted to subsidize people that choose to send their kids to private schools in the form of vouchers, and you really put a squeeze on the system. When we stand together, though, and one of the things that I really encourage my members to do, and we see success stories about it all the time, is that if we engage politically and we engage by advocating for passage of school levies and electing, pro-public education school board members and electing pro-public education candidates to state office and people to support us at the national level, it makes a lot of difference. And right now, there's a lot of money flowing into our schools, thanks to the American Rescue Plan Act and the leadership of President Biden and this Congress to really shore up some of those shortfalls that we have been facing for a long time to help us get through the pandemic, but also to really meet the needs of our students. And in doing that, it allows us to cut class sizes, and then hopefully better compensate teachers as well.
Yeah, because we know what works to help students learn. We don't need magic tricks. We don't need silver bullets. Vouchers, sorry, not working. They're just making rich people richer. Charter schools have been shown to be, for some, a little bit better, but for the mass, no better, in a lot of cases even worse. And these god-awful cyber charters that we've got here in Pennsylvania are just by far the worst ripoff. And look, we learned, I think all of us saw through the pandemic what a cyber charter school really looks like. And I hope we now roundly reject this nonsense going forward.
It was interesting, parents understandably were clamoring for the reopening of schools, when things had to shut down during the pandemic. And we're right there with them. I mean, there's nothing we want more than for schools to be open for in-person instruction, because we know how difficult it is to connect with kids and to support them, not just academically, but in terms of their social and emotional needs, if we're not there in person. But we worked through it. We did the best we could. But I think everybody recognizes that, except for a pretty rare set of circumstances, online schooling just isn't the way to go. There is no substitute for a caring, compassionate, committed teacher who can connect with their kids in the classroom. And so, but through all that, public schools that were providing online instruction blew the competition away. And you see really kind of this emperor has no clothes effect when you look at just how bad the performance of these online charters are. In Ohio, the largest one we have, they had a chronic absenteeism rate last year of close to 50%. It's ridiculous.
No, it's crazy. But it shows what committed, well-trained, passionate educators can do. Whereas you look at some of the other ones, this is a stop along to somewhere else. I mean, I know people have gone through the Teach for America thing, and we're gonna do this as kind of a hobby and then move on. I'm going, no, that's not what we want as an education system. So the last question I've got for you, because I've yet to find many people who look at their kids' teachers, they're terrible. Most of the people love their kids' teachers. When you hear people complain, it's about those teachers. We don't actually know them, but they're there somewhere and they're teaching bad stuff. So how do we undo that and focus on, we do love our public school teachers. We do love our public schools.
Well, I think we have an obligation as a union, we have an obligation as a profession to not be bashful, to tell our stories, to celebrate our successes, to advocate as much as we can for the resources that we need and for fair accountability systems. But far too often, I mean, the people that go into education, are modest folks. They're not interested in putting a spotlight on themselves. They go into this profession because they want to lift other people up.
Yep.
We have to do a better job of telling our story and really celebrating our success.
Yep. Good stuff. Or we just make them write 100 times. I shall not hate on teachers.
That works too. I like that.
And they have to do it in old school chalk on a chalkboard. That's the way forward. But Scott, I appreciate the time. Really good talk with you. I hope you'll come back and talk to us again.
Thanks, Rick.
Good stuff. Scott DiMauro, president of the Ohio Education Association, OEA. Their website, ohea.org. We'll get links out on social media on how you can check that out. Quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. For working people from the talk.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1929. That was the day that Viljo Rasval and Jani Voutilainen disappeared on their way to recruit workers at a bush camp during a strike in northwestern Ontario, Canada, near Thunder Bay. They were both Finnish Canadians. Viljo Rasval was an organizer for the Lumber Workers Industrial Union of Canada. The union included many Finnish lumber workers and had ties to the Canadian Communist Party. Jani Voutilainen was an experienced trapper. The two men never made it to their destination, the Pigeon Timber Company camp located north of Onion Lake. It was unknown what had happened to them until the next April. Voutilainen's body was found in shallow water at the edge of Onion Lake. A few days later, Rasval was found, also drowned, in a nearby creek that emptied into the lake. The Finnish workers blamed the deaths of the two men on the conservative Finnish camp boss, who oversaw the Onion Lake encampment. The coroner's autopsy ruled the deaths accidental drownings, but many remained unconvinced and suspected foul play. They questioned how an experienced trapper such as Voutilainen could fall through the ice and drown in such shallow water. Thousands attended the funeral for the martyrs. The debate over what happened to the two men continues to this day. An historical marker reads, quote, "The mystery surrounding the deaths of Rosval and Voutilainen endures, sustaining them in public memory as martyrs to the cause of organized labor." A headstone donated by the Thunder Bay and District Labor Council was erected in 1993 to honor the graves which had gone previously unmarked. The deaths of the two men traveling to organize workers remains a mystery of the Canadian labor movement to this day.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So all week we've been spending time talking about it is National Apprenticeship Week. And as someone who truly believes we need to revive our vocational programs in schools, and look, the only reason I know how to do anything with a hammer or a saw or anything is because I learned it in school in these VOTEC classes. We all took industrial arts. You learned to build the birdhouse. You learned how to build a little table. You learned how to do things, pour metal, weld a little bit. You need this stuff. Sadly, most schools don't have this anymore. We eviscerated that stuff in the 90s. It has to come back, especially now. Now we've got this infrastructure bill going to create hundreds of thousands, if not millions of jobs, and jobs of people who are going to have to know how to weld a little, pour a little concrete, paint, do a whole bunch of stuff. This is exciting times. And with National Apprenticeship Week, we need to talk about how to get those people those skills. And here to share some thoughts on it, I've asked Anton Ruesing to come talk with us. Anton is the executive director of the International Finishing Trades Institute, IFTI.edu, their website. We'll get links out on social media. Anton, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks, Rick. Happy to be here.
So we've got this huge infrastructure bill. You guys got to be really happy about this.
Absolutely. There's definitely a skills gap that's out there. There's a labor shortage out there, and we need skilled labor to do all the work that's coming up. And apprenticeship is one of the best ways to get that skilled labor and train people for the future.
Now, I've been telling my kids and others, look, the apprenticeship programs are a great way to get skills, portable skills that you'll have for the rest of your life. And the best thing, you're not going to have a lifetime of student loan debt, and they're going to pay you to learn. I don't know how much better it gets than that.
Absolutely. So my personal story, I started painting to pay for college. I wanted to go to school. I came from a working class family. We didn't have the money. I didn't qualify for a lot of scholarships. I wasn't the best student. And I knew nothing about the trades other than I knew construction workers made good money. I joined the trades. I did it so that I could pay for school. I learned so much about how to make money, how to earn, how to be a responsible person. By the time I finished school, I realized I really loved the trades and I didn't want to go into the corporate world. And I stayed in the trades. And my daughter's about to graduate high school, and I'm encouraging her to join an apprenticeship program and get a skilled trade. You actually can still get college credit as part of it. But more importantly, make money while you're earning. Like you said, there's no college debt at the end of an apprenticeship program.
Yeah, and the interesting thing to me is, when I was in high school, we were told the only way that you were going to get into the middle class was to go to college, get a degree, get that corner office, wear the white shirt and the tie, and all of that. And that didn't work out for many people. And they de-emphasized actual work, the ability to take something and turn it into something else. And I think we're at a moment, maybe you'll agree with me, Anton, that we're finally in a moment where we're going to look back and go, that was a mistake. We need skilled people to be able to do the work that needs to be done, and we need to pay them reasonably, which is why I think the programs you guys run so vitally important.
Absolutely. People look down on construction in a lot of circumstances. You hear dumb construction worker, you hear people say things like that. We even ourselves will talk about ourselves, I'm just a big dumb construction worker. I don't know any better. We say it almost as a joke, but people take that seriously. And the work that we do is honorable. It's necessary. You make really good money while you're doing it. At the end of the day, you can step back and take a look at what you've accomplished. You have something to show for your work. You know, it's a people say an honest day's work for an honest day's pay. It's an honest day's work for a really good day's pay. If you know what you're doing, you show up every day, you show up on time, and you work hard while you're there. And again, that's what apprenticeship programs can do. They don't just give you an hourly job where you make a little bit of money and you move on to the next thing. They give you a career, something you can be proud of, and you know, it's an honorable trade.
Now, as the director, the executive director of the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, International Finishing Trades Institute, which is a long title. It's a long title for your apprenticeship program. What is this program like? How does one get into it? What's the path?
Sure. So typically you can go to any union hall and apply, and almost nobody's turned away anymore. There's so many opportunities out there. You go in and you apply. You don't have to have any experience. You can come with absolutely no experience as long as you're willing to work hard and you're willing to learn. Typically, you go to classes. It's about 144 hours per year minimum. That's the Department of Labor's minimum requirements. Some programs go a little bit longer than that, but you go about 144 hours per year. You work on the job while you're going to class. Sometimes classes are at night. Sometimes are on the weekends. Sometimes we do block training where you might go for 3 or 4 days in a row. But the rest of the time you're working, making money while you work. And as you're learning, as you're progressing through the trade, you get increases along the way. And our programs, depending on the trade, run anywhere from 2 years to 4 years. And that's if you're working full time through the whole thing. Some people take a little time off and they make the programs take a little bit longer, but they're really designed between 2 and 4 years. And again, no experience necessary to come in, just wanting to work, a desire to work hard. And we take anybody that has that desire and has that work ethic, and we can teach you how to paint, we can teach you how to do drywall, we can teach you how to glaze, floor covering, wall covering installation. We can teach you all the necessary components of the skills and the craft. What you really need to do is just have the ability to work and the desire to work.
Yeah, well, now the knock that we hear today, and you're the one who does the training here, is that nobody wants to work anymore, Anton. We're all lazy. We all want to sit home and do nothing. Are we finding that to be reality?
Not really. I mean, there's always a couple knuckleheads in every bunch. But for the most part, people want to work hard. They want to feel good about the work they've done at the end of the day. And people really aren't afraid of work. They're not afraid of doing what's necessary and having something to show for it. The paycheck's part of it. They have a paycheck to show for it. They put food on their plate. They can buy cars and houses and live a good middle class lifestyle. But the thing that really comes out of it is that feeling of accomplishment at the end of the day of contributing, doing work. Every time you drive past a water tower, somebody's painting that water tower, making sure that the water inside is safe to drink. Every time you drive over a bridge, somebody's making sure that protective coatings are put on there so that the bridge doesn't rust and fall down. Every time you're in a high rise, somebody put that glass in and put it in to make sure that it didn't blow out of the building, fall down and injure. That's honorable work. It's necessary work. And the feeling that you get from doing that type of work, it's far and above just the paycheck that you get.
Yeah, no, we've been talking to people about apprenticeship programs all week, and the thing that comes out, especially with last night we talked to an IBEW member who had spent time in prison, went from doing a 5-year stint in prison to coming out and going through the IBEW's apprenticeship program. Now he's making 6 figures, buying a house and having cars, getting married here. Life completely different than he could have imagined. And yet, it's because of these apprenticeship programs, and that's not a unique story from what I'm told. This is what you guys do.
Absolutely, and I've been doing this since I got into trades in '96. I've been either training apprenticeship programs, I've been running apprenticeship programs. I've been doing that for about probably 12, 13, 14 years now, in one way or another. I've got countless stories of people whose lives were truly transformed. some people will joke around and they'll say this is the last stop between, a life in prison or, a life of crime and, making good money in a middle class lifestyle. And while that's not the best analogy, it's true in a lot of circumstances. We could take someone with no prior skill or ability or knowledge of construction and give them a pathway towards that middle class lifestyle. I've got an apprentice that he was an apprentice of mine when I first started. We actually found him sleeping in his car at the Union Hall. He wasn't an apprentice at the time. He was just a guy that we found sleeping in the car. And being a jerk, I walked over with a buddy of mine, tapped on the window, and we're like, "Hey, what are you doing? Get out of here! This isn't a place for you to sleep." And he said, "Sorry, man, I'm down on my luck. I lost my job. I don't have a place to live. I'm living out of the back of the car." I felt bad for him, and like I said, we typically don't turn people away that are willing to work. So we asked him, "Are you willing to work? You want to put some time in?" And he said he was. He said, "I don't have any money. I don't have any way to start." And I told him, "Okay, here's what we'll do. I'll take care of your first quarter dues. If you show up every day and show up on time, I'll send you out to work. We got a couple safety classes for you to take. I'll send you out to work. First quarter's on me. After that, you gotta pay your dues. You got to come to class, show up every day, and work hard while you're there." 4 years later, he's graduating the apprenticeship program, and he wasn't just another face. I mean, I felt something for him, obviously, but I saw so many apprentices go through. He was one of the guys that was graduating, and he came up to me and he says, "I got to tell you how meaningful the conversation that we had was in my life, and how you truly transformed my life, and you gave me something." He says, I had a decision to make that day, and I didn't know if it was going to be, stop living or if I was going to turn to a life of crime. But he said, I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what I was doing. And he said, "I think God put you in my life for a reason." Me and my partner that I was with, we helped him, put him on the right track. He did the rest of it. We gave him an opportunity. I gave him classes along the way, taught him what he needed to know. He brought that work ethic. He brought that willingness to learn, that willingness to work hard. And he's the one that really transformed his life. We just gave him an opportunity and opened a door. And, I've got hundreds of stories like that, that were either, something I witnessed with an apprentice, or something that one of my instructors, or one of my colleagues, or one of my peers went through. My own story is not quite that transformational, but, I didn't know what I was going to do after high school. I went in the Marine Corps. I got out. There weren't a lot of opportunities for me. But I went to the union. I learned a trade, and I've put food on my family's plate ever since. I've made really good money over the course of my life. I have the opportunity now to give back to the union, give back to the industry. It's an amazing thing, and it doesn't matter where you come from, what your background is, what you look like. We take anybody that has a willingness to work hard, anybody that has a willingness to learn.
You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Anton Ruesing. Anton is the executive director of the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades International Finishing Trades Institute. Their website, ifti.edu. Glad they didn't spell all that out. ifti.edu. Information on what they do, how they do it, all that really good stuff. To go back to this, because I think it's important to point out, as you've said, you just got to show up with a willingness to work. But I think a lot of people have, especially the last 20 years, don't know what unions are, don't know what they do, and honestly have been trained to not think that unions are worth anything, that all they want is your dues money, and all of the worst possible things that you can hear. So, in reaching out to people who don't know anything about unions, because a lot of people are a generation or two removed. Yeah, great grandpa worked in a union. Things were good for him. How do we bridge the gap to bring people in to understand that, what you're doing is really almost God's work. You're giving people opportunities that they wouldn't have otherwise, and opportunities at really, really solid wage jobs with excellent healthcare benefits, retirement security, and all of that stuff. How do we make that leap?
Oh, that's a tough question. I wish I had a simple answer. Everything you say is 100% true. We're taught that unions are a bad thing. We always hear that unions are the best kept secret. the reality of it is if people just open their mind up and are willing to take a chance and take a look at what unions actually do, I think they'd be surprised. It's not just about the 40-hour work week. It's just not just about healthcare and vacation time that unions gave us. It's about doing the right thing, being good, ethical, moral people. Unions are leaders in diversity. Unions help drive affirmative action programs. Unions help, create opportunities for people of all walks of life. That's what unions do. And it's unfortunately not as many people know about unions as they should. And what they do know, like you said, it's not always the best thing. Yeah. Every person that I've talked to that actually knows what we're about and what we do, they'll always say, I didn't realize unions did the things that you do. I didn't realize unions were as good as they really are. I wish we could find a way to make people understand and just come in with an open mind. Give us a shot, talk to us, see what we do. And I think they'll realize what a powerful force we could be for society and how much we can really help the average person.
No, I'm a believer in unions change lives. I grew up in a housing project on the west side of Cleveland. And when someone in our neighborhood got a job at Ford or Chevy or one of those places, when they got that union job, it meant a better life. They had food at the end of the month. The kids got secondhand bikes. They got a secondhand car. They eventually moved up and out. So for me, very young, I knew a union job meant a better life, which is why I think that's the message that you're selling. Look, the reality is you want an opportunity to have a better life. This is the pathway to get to a better life.
Absolutely.
So again, before we finish this up, I want to make sure I hammer home on how we get into this. If I'm an 18-year-old kid, I don't know anything about unions. I don't know anybody in the union. I don't know anybody associated with it. What's the first step is what?
First step is reach out to a union hall. You can do it through the North American Building Trades website, nab2.org. You can reach out to the IUPA directly if you're interested in painting, glazing, drywall, finishing, floor covering, IUPAT.org. You can reach out to us through our International Finishing Trades Institute website, ifti.edu, or look up a union on Google. Go to the local nearest union hall and say, I'm looking for an opportunity. I'm willing to work hard. I'm willing to learn. I want to see what you guys have to offer. There's no cost for tuition or anything like that. It's a free education that leads to a career, not just a job.
Yep.
So reach out to any union hall.
I know I said last question, but I forgot this. Are you one of those people who drive your kids around and go, I did that, and that? Are you one of those people?
I used to. I used to. I worked at the theme park for a while, and I love taking my kids there and pointing them out. I've been out of the field for a few years now, running our national training program. I love what I do, but honestly, there's two things I really miss in my current job. I love training. I really miss being in the classroom and being with apprentices, and I really miss being out in the field and working with my hands. There's something really fulfilling about doing that work every day, and I do miss that. But yeah, I'm one of those guys. I love driving the kids around and showing them what Daddy's worked on.
Yeah. No, every building trades person I've ever known, they have no problem telling you I did that. And that yep. Pride is part of, it's about the wages, hours, condition, yes, but also about the pride and what you build in your community. I think that's a big part of it too, Anton. Anton, I appreciate you taking time for us. Great story. Thanks so much. Best of luck, and I hope to talk to you again real soon.
Thanks, Rick. Take care.
Good stuff, Anton Ruesing. Make sure you check out their website, ifti.edu, also iupat.org. We'll get links out on social media, how you can take a look at that. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1936. That was the day that workers at the General Motors plant in Atlanta, Georgia, participated in a sit-down strike. This was part of a wave of labor organizing during the 1930s. Other General Motors plants in Kansas City and Cleveland went on strike. The most famous sit-down strike occurred in December in Flint, Michigan. where striking workers occupied General Motors plants for more than 40 days. The goal of these strikes was to unionize under the auspices of the United Auto Workers Union. The United Auto Workers was founded in May of 1935 in Detroit, Michigan. The union was initially part of the American Federation of Labor. However, when John L. Lewis formed the Congress of Industrial Organizations, the UAW left the AFL to join the new Labor Federation. This strategy was first used by CIO rubber workers in February and March of 1936. While it is believed that IWW members at the General Electric Works in Schenectady, New York, were the first to sit down as they protested the firings of 3 fellow IWW members in 1906, the CIO mastered the tactic of the sit-down strike. The method was effective because when workers sat down on the job, management was hesitant to use force to evict them. They worried about damaging production equipment. The sit-down also made bringing in scab labor very difficult. A 1939 Supreme Court decision effectively ended most sit-down strikes in the United States.
Come away with me, Lucille, in my merry old mobile. Down the road of life we'll fly, automobile bubbling, you and I.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Sometimes, when watching Congress in action, I can't decide whether to laugh, cry, or check myself into an insane asylum. Not all lawmakers are political hacks, quacks, and corporate toadies, but that contingent seems to dominate. Most infuriating is that while purporting to represent the people, Congress routinely does what the American majority does not want done and fails to do what people do want. Take a peek at the cuts Congress is making in Joe Biden's landmark infrastructure proposals. This is a monumental, long overdue undertaking to reinvest in America's physical house and social underpinnings, everything from roads and broadband networks to child care and paid family leave. The package would deliver real, tangible benefits across our nation, especially for low and middle-income families, so it is enormously popular. Yet, when the first half of the plan recently came to a vote in the House, Republicans turned it into a partisan mud wrestling show, loudly voting no on such obvious needs as fixing decrepit bridges, providing clean tap water in every community, and opening preschool education programs to all 3- and 4-year-olds. Cynical Republican gamesmanship aside, even more infuriating is the clique of self-described moderate Democrats who pose as champions of workaday Americans but constantly scuttle policies that would make their lives better. For example, the GOP and corporate Democrats have jointly demanded a $1 trillion compromise in Biden's national investment plans. What's being compromised? Not proposals to fund the corporate wish list, but long-postponed needs of everyday Americans. This is Jim Hightower saying, the wealthy and their political enablers complain that America can't afford such projects. But these aren't projects, they're people, and leaving them behind again would be an abominable moral failure of our society. The Hightower Radio Lowdown is made possible by you lowdowners who subscribe to our monthly newsletter, The Hightower Lowdown. You know who you are. Thank you.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, time to let the fun begin. Lots of craziness going on. They censured Gozar. Then he had a little meltdown. I don't really know what that was about. But Kevin McCarthy today said, hey, we're going to give him, when we get the House back, he's getting his seat back. So is the crazy woman from Georgia. Yeah, that's a reason to vote for a Republican in the next election, so that crazy people can get back on committees. I hope they run that as a bumper sticker. We want her. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the insanity and the craziness going on in our government and across the nation. I've asked our good friend Sarah Burris to come talk with us. Sarah is a fantastic reporter over at RawStory. You have to see her work, rawstory.com, the website. Sarah, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday indeed. Let's jump right into it. Evidently, Trump put this Durham guy in to go after Mueller. Is it going to help?
I don't think so. this has been going on for 1.5 years now, and he's made one indictment, and even that one, everybody's like, this makes no sense. The weird conversation that has gone on so far has been, you remember that story about there being a server that was communicating with Alpha Bank in Russia out of Trump Tower, and everybody was like, what the heck is this about? Because it wasn't like a Trump campaign computer or even a Trump organization computer. It was just in Trump Tower. I think it was a marketing firm.
Right.
And for some reason, it was communicating back and forth with Alpha Bank in Russia. So Alpha Bank has been suing this whole tech research firm, trying to figure out how they assessed those factors to determine that those computers were talking back and forth. So now this company is from Russia is going after all these nerd researchers. And so a lot of folks are saying that they think that this is actually an attempt by Alpha Bank to uncover the way that, crazy tech hacking and stuff from the U.S. government is done, to uncover it for international purposes. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I read today, where I was just like, dang, what the heck, guys?
But, I have a lot of conservative friends who look at this Durham guy and think he's going to be the one to unravel the Mueller investigation, and they're gonna prove Trump completely innocent and completely harmless, and prove that there were no connections between Trump and Vlad, nothing between the Trump campaign and Russian operatives, that it's all made up, it's all a Democratic hoax, and Durham, he's the guy who's going to bring home the bacon.
Yeah, and it's not going to happen. Even if, they basically have gone through the Steele dossier and said, we can't determine whether or not this is true. But even at that point, without the Steele dossier, we have proven all of these crazy relationships between Donald Trump's campaign and the Russians. We've proven that Russia meddled in the 2016 election, that they hacked the DNC and the RNC. All of these things have been proven, and they're accepted by the global community. I don't understand why the entire world accepts this, but Republicans don't.
Yeah, well, and Q doesn't either. No, but I think it's because they don't want to believe it. And I said from the beginning, was there an implicit conspiracy? Did they sit down and draw out a plot to overthrow? No. These are people who have been working together for decades. They've got long-time relationships, and it's not about democracy or high-minded things. It's simply about money. It's about grift. It's about how much they can put into their pockets and how much they can rob, steal, lie, and cheat and get away with it. It's not about any of grand conspiracy theory. It's just who these people have always been and always will be.
Yeah, and I think with the stuff with Trump's campaign specifically, I don't think that they set out to collude with Russia. I think they sort of stumbled their way into it, where there were Russian operatives that met with Donald Jr. and they were like, heck yeah, this sounds great, and so they showed that willingness to cooperate with Russia and work with Russia on this, and that's whenever Russia started hacking stuff for them.
Yeah, which is why they had that lawyer woman come with Manafort and Jared and Dumb Jr. And you go, wait a second, how is it that these people are such amateurs? And you would think Manafort would know better than to put himself in that room. That's a meeting you have with third-tier staffers, so you can have a level of plausible deniability. You go, I didn't know who it was just a staffer. The fact that that woman got into a room with the highest level of the Trump campaign tells you that there was something there, because she said, I've got dirt. They wanted it, didn't care where it came from.
And at that stage in the campaign, there really weren't that many people working for him. It was pretty low level. And I want to say it was the family and maybe less than a dozen people who were on the campaign. It wasn't until after the primary that they really started to hire staff. And so, of course they took these meetings. They didn't know any better. The problem is that, they stumbled their way into,
Yep.
coordinating with the Russian government to overthrow the United States election.
And I said from the beginning they were duped into it. That they're not the brightest bulbs in the box. They're opportunists, and they probably stepped in it. And I don't doubt that there's a P tape somewhere out there, because I think he's dumb enough to do something like that.
What's interesting that you remember when Stephen Colbert went to Russia and started asking questions to everybody about, tell me about what you know about the P tape, and Colbert was able to talk to people who, claimed to be Russian spies or claimed to be former FSB people, and they basically confirmed that this tape exists. It wasn't, Donald Trump didn't rent out this room. There was just this big party with these hookers there, and he was just sort of sitting in the room, and that's when he made the suggestion, what you should do.
Yep. No, he wasn't down on the street corner picking people up. That's not how that works.
Yeah, that's not how that works at all. And I think a lot of people sort of see it as this, in that sort of, stereotypical hooker way thing.
And he probably didn't even know they were hookers because they were sent. And look, this is what the KGB used to do. It's what our CIA does. Look, if you read enough of these books from these former CIA agents, it's all about that. That's how they rope you in. That's how they get you.
And basically that put, not the hotel incident, but the, Russia reaching out and being able to have Trump and his people admit that they, want to coordinate with the Russian government, that puts them on the hook because that's illegal. And so now Russia has dirt on Trump to be able to manipulate him.
Yep. So going to be interesting again to see how this all plays out and we move down the road. Now, during the Gozar censure, Lauren Boebert had a couple of choice words where she went off about a couple of Democrats. One of them, speaking of spies and people fiddling around with spies, went after Eric Swalwell. What did Eric Swalwell do with the Chinese spy?
Oh my God. This is the most annoying conspiracy theory in the world because it's sad because Eric Swalwell actually did the right thing in this case, while all of the Republicans who've been in the exact same situation did the opposite of the right thing. Basically, there were Chinese spies that were making their way around Democratic politics, trying to, make connections exactly the way that Maria Butina was doing with the, conservative gun movement. So this woman, started talking to Swalwell, they started dating, and the FBI approached him in 2012, almost 10 years ago, is when this happened. And they said, hey, we have reason to believe that the girl that you're dating is actually a Chinese spy. And he was like, holy crap, what do I do? And they were like, well, let's see what we can get on her, what information we can get about her. And that's when Eric Swalwell started working with the FBI to basically help them catch a Chinese spy who now has been, who's fled the United States. The exact same thing happened with Maria Butina and the guy that, she would sing Disney songs with. And who else? Carter Page.
Yeah.
There were a lot of contacts from Russian people, and even like the FBI approached both Clinton and Trump and said, we've got intelligence that Russians are trying to reach out to your campaigns, and be careful. Let us know anything that you know about. And so whenever they had that Trump Tower meeting with the Russian lawyer, nobody reached out to the FBI and said, oh, hey, we're meeting with this woman. This might be a sketchy thing. Do you want to be in for the meeting or something? They basically, all of the Republicans that were warned there's some sketchy stuff going on with these spies, they just were like, oh, this is crap, and dismissed it. And the thing about Swalwell is he actually did do the right thing. Republicans never have.
Yeah, and she, Boebert went after him on the floor, and you go, if you're going to go after someone, at least get your facts right.
Yeah, and that's one of my favorite things that that Jimmy Kimmel has talked about, where he did a whole segment on his show where he showed a bunch of Lauren Boebert's videos to people on the street and said to those people, you know, this is from Saturday Night Live. They're imitating her. Do you think that they went too far? And all of those people were like, oh my God, this is terrible. I think they went way too far. This is too stupid. They just made her sound so much, you know, so dumb, but they got her look right. She looks like, the actress is really good. She looks just like her. And then at the end, after they had basically talked about how, you know, SNL went way over the top, that's when they told them it was Lauren Boebert, and everybody's response was, oh, wow.
Someone voted for that? And here's the thing. I fully expect her to be reelected.
I don't know. I think it depends on how much people get involved and, you know, the opponent that she has, and if folks step up and help out with the campaign. You have to look at what's happening in her community. Is she actually doing anything that matters and that helps people? That's basically how elections like this are won and lost.
Good
if you've got somebody who's an idiot, then why are they there if they're not helping?
You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Sarah Burris, reporter at RawStory. The website, rawstory.com. We'll get links out on social media so you can check out the fabulous work that she does there. You know, shaman guy, Q shaman guy, horns, red and white paint all over his face, spear. He 41 months in jail. Gave an eloquent speech of how he's changed and don't judge him by who he was, and, you know, look into his heart. Some quotes, you know, just some amazing quotes from the past. Judge still gave him 41 months.
Yeah, and the prosecutors asked for 4 years. So, I mean, 41 months is lower than 4 years, so not by much. Plus, he's already got 10 months behind bars. I don't know if the judge has made any allowances for his vegan diet for prison. I don't think so. It may put him into a position where he's going to have to start picking, you know, dandelions out of the yard whenever he's out and about.
If he's ever out and about.
Yeah.
Because I got to imagine they're going to put him in solitary or in some kind of, you know, off to the side accommodation to keep him away from everybody.
I don't know. I think that, you know, there would have to be some example of, you know, him being a target and his life being in danger before I think that they would do that. But even if that's the route that they go and they're able to keep him safe that way, that's still 41 months in solitary. Like, people go nuts being alone that long. Look at what happened during COVID.
Yeah, no, I almost went crazy. I'm with you. Now I look at this MAGA rioter who evidently tried to rescind his confession. Am I getting this? He tried to get the confession tossed out, rescinded. What happened?
Yeah. So, this is another person who, bless their hearts, they basically met with police after they arrested him for participating in the January 6th attack. He started bawling and in the interview and was like, I'm so stupid, I'm terrible, and a bunch of swear words, and made this big glorious confession, making it very clear that the reason he was so upset is that he didn't want his mother to find out. Bless your heart.
Oh man.
Don't crime if you don't want mother to know.
Yeah, don't treason if you don't want mama to find out.
Just saying. And so now that is being used in his trial, and he doesn't want to plead guilty. He wants to plead not guilty, and so he wants to rescind his confession. And everybody's like, "It's on tape, dude." Like,
yeah, that's not how it works.
Clear.
That's how see, they give you that thing. You have the right to remain silent. My grandfather used to always say this. You have the right to remain silent. Use it.
Yeah. And they, to his credit and to his lawyer's credit, they did not read his Miranda rights to him until a little bit after he had started talking. But it was done with enough into the conversation that he was still confessing whenever they said, now, I just want you to know you have the right to remain silent. And he was just like, I know, I'm so terrible. Don't look at me, I'm hideous.
Bearing his soul, begging forgiveness. That is not the place or the time to beg for the forgiveness. And look, I'm hoping he goes to jail too. But I'm actually liking some of the responses, because jail for these people may actually be a real deterrent. You got the woman in Texas who was Googling, I guess, what jail was like because she's freaking out. You got the Proud Boy guy going, "Oh, please let me out. It's real bad in here. I don't like it." This is hysterical to me.
There is one lawyer who even said that he wanted to get his client out of prison because his client has been sort of put in the area of the DC jail where where all of the insurrectionists are together. And so he made a case, I swear to God, he made a case to the court where he said, if my client is in there with those people, he will not learn any contrition and be able to change his whether or not he's guilty and learn that he did something wrong and like all of these things. And you're just like, dude, you basically just handed out your client, to say, I'm working for this guy who's clearly guilty, and he needs to be pulled out of prison so he'll admit his guilt.
Yeah, well, you don't want him to get in with the criming people and become worse, because isn't that one of the things the mob used to say? They went to school, they got into prison, they learned how to do criming better.
Yeah, I mean, these people have already been radicalized on Facebook. Now they're, I guess, going to get even more radicalized in DC jails.
Wasn't there a story not too long ago how they do that group that you're talking about would say the Pledge of Allegiance, and they would sing the Star Spangled Banner, and they would talk Q stuff. It was like a whole little coffee clutch.
Yeah, and Marjorie Taylor Greene went to visit them. And to their credit, like the DC jail has serious problems. There are documented issues that have been going on for a long time, and the city just hasn't fixed it ever. So this is not a new issue. It's just that now all of a sudden these white guys are in there and they're upset about it, and they need to have access to their internet or whatever.
And now I don't care about it, to be honest with you, because these are the very people who say jail should not be easy. Jail should be hard. Jail shouldn't have colored TV and cable and weight rooms and sanitary conditions. It should be difficult, so you don't want to go back. So I'm kind of in the mindset that I don't. While I don't approve of poor treatment of prisoners, maybe.
You gotta wonder, like, next time there is some sort of crime bill or some sort of bill that talks about jails and prisons and all of those things, I think that those would be perfect guys to bring in to testify before the Republicans.
And finally, all of the voter fraud talk. You've got a great piece that I thought was interesting on the voter fraud hotline that the Trump people put up. Did they find any actual voter fraud?
No. So this is probably my favorite story of the week, except for if you haven't watched Kevin McCarthy's speech tonight that he gave on the floor opposing Biden's Biden's second.
The Build Back Better?
Yeah, Build Back Better plan. He's basically being heckled by the Democrats, and Democrats have just decided they don't care, and so they're just hilariously mocking him. This is the next best story, where, bless their hearts, again, these people are so stupid, and they, I'm trying to think of how the story began, because I wrote this on Monday and now I can't remember. These people just, they don't really take into consideration what they're, if they're blaming somebody for stealing these votes, they kind of have to have evidence of this.
Right.
And so whenever they don't, and they start making stuff up, it just ends up looking.
And then people start pranking them.
Yeah, and I mean, what happened with the Trump people is there are people. I think it was in Jonathan Karl's book. There are people who worked for his campaign that are legitimately traumatized, because there would be, how people used to do obscene phone calls like a million years ago when everybody had landlines. Right. It was basically like that. That was happening to all of these poor kids who were on these hotlines, and they, creepy people calling in, there were threats, there were And then all of the stuff that was just outright false. And so they didn't find any voter fraud, but they got trolled a lot.
But now they got all these poor people who feel traumatized, and they're victims. But at the end of the day, they chose to do this. So I don't feel for them.
And these are kids who are, they're like the intern level. These are the lowest level staffers on the campaign. And so you feel bad for these poor kids.
I don't. Sorry. I don't do it. Not at all. Not at all. But if you want to check out the story, check out Sarah's writing over at RawStory, RawStory.com. Sarah, I appreciate the time. Great stuff.
You bet. Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Good stuff. Our good friend Sarah Burris. Make sure you check out her work over at RawStory.com. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. Where working people come to talk.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
Record rain, fierce flooding, whipping winds, and multiple mudslides.
Pacific Northwest careens from deadly extreme heat to deadly extreme floods.
Not aligned with our view, the president's policies, or the executive order that he signed.
Interior Department holds controversial oil and gas lease sale in the Gulf of Mexico. Plus, Biden promotes infrastructure deal and American-made electric vehicles.
All of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Inflation is becoming a real problem. I went to a gas station today, and for a gallon of regular, it just said, kill yourself.
Why not? That same gallon is killing all the rest of us. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, I always thought if I moved up to Canada, I might be able to avoid the worst consequences of climate change. Not so much, it looks like.
No, sadly. Torrential rains triggered severe flooding in British Columbia and Washington state over the last few days, forcing evacuations and requiring hundreds of high water rescues. In British Columbia, a state of emergency has been declared after some areas saw as much as a foot of rain in just 24 hours.
Wow.
That caused widespread destruction, truly astonishing in its breadth and scale. Flooding and landslides have cut off all three main highways out of the city of Vancouver, British Columbia. All rail lines at the port of Vancouver have been severed. At least one person was killed. The death toll is expected to rise. The destruction of critical infrastructure will take months to repair and is likely to have long-term impacts for Canada's economy. Plus, the catastrophic flooding temporarily shut down Canada's Trans Mountain Oil Pipeline, and its proposed expansion has been halted.
So there's that.
Much of the damage occurred in places still trying to recover from the devastating wildfire season in British Columbia. Some areas set new all-time high rainfall records just 5 months after suffering a deadly record extreme heat wave. Climate scientists say that each additional degree of man-made global warming causes a substantial increase in the frequency and intensity of extreme downpours. These extreme weather events will continue to get worse, even if every country achieves every commitment they made at the recently concluded UN Climate Summit in Glasgow.
Wow, this whole climate change thing is turning out to be somewhat expensive.
Indeed, it is. In Egypt, where it rarely rains, a climate change intensified extreme rainfall event unleashed a horde of killer scorpions.
What?
Yes, really. The rains flushed hordes of highly venomous scorpions out of their nests and into homes, where their stings hospitalized more than 500 people.
I did not have killer scorpions on my 2021 disaster bingo card.
In other news, the Biden Interior Department angered environmental groups this week in holding its first sale of new federal oil and gas leases in the Gulf of Mexico. That was in compliance with a federal court injunction, finding the administration's pause in the federal leasing program to be illegal. Here's White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki.
We're required to comply with the injunction. It's a legal case and legal process, but it's important for advocates and other people out there who are following this to understand that it's not aligned with our view, the president's policies, or the executive order that he signed.
Huffington Post reports that while there are executive actions Biden could take to halt or delay such lease sales, such actions carry political risk as President Biden's Build Back Better Act awaits passage in Congress.
You know, the last guy in office just ignored court orders. I don't know what they're so worried about.
The White House this week also hit back against the latest political attacks over rising energy prices, caused in part by pandemic disruptions, calling it another sign of the necessity to transition away from fossil fuel dependence. Most market analysts say there's almost nothing any president can do to alter the price of oil or market fundamentals to drive down costs in the short term, but President Biden this week asked the Federal Trade Commission to investigate potentially illegal conduct by big oil companies who may be inflating gas prices even as their profits have risen and the cost of refining fuels has fallen.
Go get 'em. And ain't it funny how it's only when Democrats are in the White House that everyone gets concerned about the price of gas?
Finally, some good news.
Good.
President Joe Biden highlighted the benefits of electric vehicles in Detroit on Wednesday at a General Motors plant converted to EV production as he promoted the economic impact of the bipartisan infrastructure deal to help transition the nation to clean energy, which also includes billions of dollars for a national electric vehicle charging network. All of that, Biden said, will boost domestic manufacturing and make the nation more competitive with China.
We're going to kickstart new batteries, materials, and parts production and recycling, boosting the manufacturing of clean vehicles with new loans and new tax credits, creating new purchase incentives for consumers.
Well, good. Not a moment too soon, but maybe a decade or two too late. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So looking forward to getting this Build Back Better plan moving. Evidently, the debating on it began today in the House. This is the $1.75 trillion climate social infrastructure bill. Should have been more. Again, that is a ship that has sailed. Next year is already another opportunity. This is something you run on in elections. Hey, we got you 1.75 trillion. We can expand it down the road, but the first part of it is get it in the law and get it moving forward. So it's going to be interesting the next couple of days, see where this goes. Here to share some thoughts on what this could look like, I've asked our good friend, former Ohio Congressman and political analyst Bob Ney to come talk with us. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Oh, thank you, Rick.
So where are we with this? What's the word?
Well, there's a scoring, as they call it, of the package of the Congressional Budget Office. Everybody's kind of been on bated breath for that, and the scoring should come out pretty good. The addition to the deficit is probably going to be overall scored very low, and so the Congressional Budget Office will probably come in line to give a little bit of push to those who maybe were a little bit uncertain about the fiscal side of this. So I think that'll be okay. They're trying for a vote, soon. I'll put it that way. But I think eventually they get the vote. Now, of course, the jackpot question after that is what will happen, because the Senate will undoubtedly cut certain things or axe certain things. And then most likely they could pass a bill, and then we all know the conference committee process where, items are added back and you don't get to amend when it comes to the House and Senate again. You get one up or down vote.
Right.
So that conference committee, let's face it, is where the progressives could restore certain things if they were lost in the Senate.
Yeah. Now, the big stuff in this is the child care costs and the universal pre-K and all of that stuff, which is stuff I think we need. I mean, as a society, this is the kind of social safety net stuff that we actually need to help families get ahead and to do better.
Right. They do. I mean, people have been talking about, what they could do, especially, with the situation of schools, the fact that kids are sometimes in school, sometimes out of school. We know that. The pandemic, what's going to happen down the road, what parent tries to, take care of the kids, and stay home. So, I mean, there's a lot of issues. If you want to go to work, you need, some help with with the children, obviously. That's in there. I think prescription drugs, that's one that I think they could go to town a lot more than they are on it. But, that still is an issue.
Yeah, it's a messaging problem. I think the Democrats have really done a poor job of explaining what this stuff is, why it's important. And I think part of it is that they don't have the megaphone that the right generally has, but they should still be out there selling this stuff. It's like anything. I've got a friend who's a salesman. He could literally sell a ketchup popsicle to a woman wearing white gloves in the middle of summer. They need this guy to sell their packages.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they do, and I think they need to stress certain things. Especially, obviously, prescription drugs, what could be done for seniors. I think there were some big-time wins in this that, some people said, well, maybe we shouldn't have it, and just kind of starting to vanish, because Senator Sinema and Senator Manchin didn't like certain things.
There they are again.
And they're a factor. So I think the House needed to keep to what it could keep with. But again, you've got universal preschool, the family and medical leave, which is running into a problem again. They're running some ads in West Virginia. I don't know if it'll influence the senator from West Virginia. The earned income credit. Then there was the $150 billion for home care, and that's for seniors. And for also some people that have disabilities, for example. And then another thing that was barely mentioned, affordable housing. Look, right now, are we in a housing boom? Sure we are. I mean, as you know, I flip houses. Selling houses is great, except the price of houses have done what? It's jumped, obviously. So in here was the affordable housing component. It included construction, rehab of homes, investment in rental assistance, housing vouchers, some really good things, because not everybody is going to have a piece of the pie in this housing market, especially when it gets as hot as it does. Yeah. Then there was the higher ed. They had workforce development. It would increase Pell Grants. Pell Grants are great. I mean, they are really seriously great things. And then they had a small business committee. They had some access to credit, and I think it was credit and investment. I mean, we could go on and on. Things that you and I right now are talking about that people probably haven't heard about.
Yeah. But it's creeping socialism, Bob. It's creeping socialism, like the affordable housing stuff. I go back to it, and I talk a lot about where my grandparents lived. This little suburb of Cleveland, Brooklyn, where most of the houses there all look the same. It's a very planned out community. The houses were all built within the same period of time, and a lot of government money went into building those houses and making them affordable. So my grandfather, coming back from World War II, was able to get a loan and was able to buy into that house at a reasonable cost and raise a family and do all those things and build wealth. And that's where my grandparents both lived and eventually died in that home that was heavily funded by government money, yet they didn't seem to think of it as creeping socialism.
Right, exactly. Well, when people say, well, these are components of socialism, I mean, if you look at, don't touch my socialistic Medicare, by the way. I dare you to.
Get your government hands off my Medicare.
Yeah, I'm one of those people now that used to write to me, don't touch my Medicare. And we've had housing programs for decades. We've had, obviously money towards business. That's the government involved with, funding loans that, create jobs. I mean, so there's all kinds of things. And, and broadband, for example, was in there, to help bring everybody into the fold, into modern times and just all kinds of things that I think were good. And then the dental, of course, and eye care was a great addition, for the seniors.
Yeah, I mean, and ultimately, I make the argument that at least the dental part of it, that's something that's
big. That's big.
That's a huge thing, and it's also it's something that helps people lead healthier lives. Because once your dental work starts going, once you start having oral problems, everything else starts to go with it. So if I think if you invest a little bit in that, you could probably save yourself a little bit of money on other things that eventually go wrong.
Right, and it can affect your heart. It can affect other functions of your body. It can cause infections, and then there's cases of people. I know a case right now where this guy is going to wait 6 months because he can't get the $1,500 crown unless he waits 6 months for this pre-existing condition on whatever insurance policy he's trying to take. So he's going to sit there and have the teeth get worse.
Yeah, and that's not just there. I mean, that's not a whole bunch of stuff. And sadly, we hear these stories far too often. And it's that whatever happened to that pound or ounce of prevention, pound of cure thing.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Yeah.
So the House is, in my opinion, has to move on this, and then they go into the conference committee. The Senate, I think we have to come to some realism on here, is going to take whatever the House does, and there's going to be some axing of programs, some reductions, some this and some that. But again, I think the big fight will be in the conference committee, because the conference committee puts people on edge. I've been through them. I've been involved with them. Because you say, well, I'm not going to do this, and then all of a sudden you get one vote up or down, because that's what you get with no amendments.
Right.
And so whatever comes out of the conference committee, usually traditionally will make it on the floor of both chambers. Of course, I can't predict the Senate anymore.
It's crazy. I can't predict what's going to happen in a lot of places. I mean, how do you govern when half of the governing body's insane? I mean.
That is tough.
I don't know. I don't know how you do get anything. And look, I give Biden credit. He got the American Rescue Plan through. He got the bipartisan infrastructure bill through. I'm hoping he gets this through with a good portion of our government who's literally insane. I mean, you've got a guy who's making up cartoons of killing another member of Congress, and then you've got the guy who's the minority leader saying, "Well, when we take control, we're going to put him right back." It's crazy, Bob.
Mm-hmm. Well, it is, and when you look at, and then also some of the people who expect the president to become a magician and to go over to the Senate and just wave a magic wand and force them to do certain things. I mean, they have to come to some peer pressure for this thing to happen. I mean, the president's done, I think, just about everything he can do. He's called them in, he's had them to his house, he's had face to face, and somewhere along the line, the body itself has to, kick in for this thing.
Yeah, I actually had some guy not too long ago tell me, "Well, he hasn't united the country like he said he was going to." I'm going, how do you expect him to unite the country when people are making cartoon videos of killing him?
Mm-hmm.
Crazy stuff.
Well, how can he also unite when the Congress itself is just split deeper than the Grand Canyon?
Yeah, another excellent point.
It's tough.
It's tough, but some good news, I guess. The CBO came out with a positive score.
Yes, the CBO score is going to be definitely benefit, and that should help. But again, I think for those who were a little bit shaky, maybe on the what we'll call the centrist side, that should help them. I think probably.
Good. Maybe we get something by the weekend. Who knows?
Because once it goes, it gets a little bit more pressure on the Senate. Obviously, if they can get out of the House.
We'll see. I'm hoping something by the weekend. Be a good weekend gift right before the holiday.
Sure would.
Good stuff. Now I understand the president declined a joint press conference with the head of Mexico and Canada. What's this about?
On this one, Rick, I'm still trying to basically wrap my hands around this and my mind around it. It's a bit strange because I'm just not sure of the rationale. Now, they say historically presidents have had press conferences with foreign leaders. Obviously, look, when foreign leaders come here to the United States, they love to be standing next to the president right after they get out of their meeting, and they said this and they said that. Now, I can fully understand if it was China with President Biden, both sides would be better off served to say nothing. seriously on that one. But Boris, was it Boris from England? I
Johnson.
Can't remember if he. Yes, I can't remember if he wanted the press conference or his people pushed for it. I think it was him. And a couple of other people, wanted to have press conferences. Trudeau was one of them, and that was the recent one. So they're asking, well, why is the president declining with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and then Mexican President Obrador? He declined to have the press conferences, and it's just a bit strange. I'm not sure why the White House is doing this. I don't believe it's because they think he can't handle a press conference with other foreign leaders. Mexico might have been a little bit, contentious, but it wouldn't be like China, because there are certain things, obviously, Mexican presidents agreeing with when it comes to the border with the president. And Canada's Canada. It's like the 51st state, right? So I can't wrap my mind around this one, what's going on. I think it's a staff decision.
It's crazy.
And it's bizarre. So let's see how it plays out. I think there's going to be a lot of pressure in the future if he doesn't have these press conferences, because, again, it's sort of a tradition, and the foreign leaders absolutely love it when they come over here because they get a lot of attention back home standing next to the President of the United States.
No, if I'm them, I'm going to want that as well. I'm sure there's going to be a lot written on why, and I'm sure my friends on the right are going, he's Sleepy Joe, he's cognitively messed up, he can't answer questions.
They've already said that, right? and so I think it just, the way the White House staff has done this, they're just going to raise a lot of issues that don't need to be raised. Look, if anything, Joe Biden has spent a political lifetime dealing with foreign affairs. Yeah. It's not like he can't get up there, like the previous president, and he can actually name leaders of countries. So I don't know where the scary part to this is.
Yeah, well, let's move on. Congress fighting over the War Powers Act. Isn't it about time we repeal this?
Yes, Rick, this is a big, big deal because Congress needs to, finally come to terms with this now that we are not actively engaged in a war. Would be an absolutely great time to, do something with the War Powers Act. Now, I was reading through, some of the statements. So first of all, they are going to have bipartisan support on this. And the War Powers Act, by the way, was started in the 70s, and it was a result of the secret bombings by Nixon, and that's how this came about. It didn't come about as a result of Johnson, but it came about as a result of the secret bombings they found out that Nixon had pursued in Cambodia. So what they're trying to say is that, now that the endless wars are over, now that we're, out of Afghanistan and we're not actively engaged in Iraq, that really this was never intended to let these operations go on and on and on. So now, and this isn't a strike at President Biden, but now they're saying that, let's do something with all the future presidents and what they could do or not do with this. Right. Now, here's the weird, wacky part. I love the boogeyman Iran on this. I'm not saying the Iranian government is a walk in the park, obviously, right? But some of the Republicans, in particular Ted Cruz and some others, are saying that if you repeal this war act, it could make the Iranian-backed militias in Iraq carry out attacks, and Iran will go nuclear, and so they're basing their objection to doing something about the War Powers Act, which should have been done a long time ago.
Right, but let me ask you this though. The answer to that is if Iran did attack us, you have the right to. The president has the right to respond. So this seems like a specious argument at best.
Oh, it is. It is because you raised the exact correct point. The president under the War Powers Act has the right to respond. And then after they respond, Congress has a time period of 60 days. There can be an extension about, this basically coming to an end. So if the president has to respond, like, let's say, on an emergency basis or semi-emergency basis, they could do that, and then the Congress comes back and acts. But what has been going on is just presidents, are engaging us, and without the, invoking of the War Powers Act, and they're just doing basically, what they want and starting different, situations. For example, in Libya in 2011, Syria, Yemen. We can go on and on and on. So I think it's a great time to do it. And this argument about Iran, and you hit the nail exactly on the head, is just absolutely not an argument.
Yeah, and look, if I'm in Congress and you were there, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't this Congress's job? Isn't that how we declare war and how we're supposed to do this stuff? Isn't this where the power should lie in Congress? So this seems to me would be a perfect opportunity for Congress to go, no, we want our power back.
This is a great opportunity, and I think it will come about. But it's a great opportunity on a bipartisan basis to do something that is really, really important, and that is to make sure that this is tempered, and that the president will have some flexibility, but that it's tempered, and that goes back to what it should be, which requires the president to tell Congress within 48 hours of committing troops that there's an action, and that they can remain no more than 60 days without an extension and act of Congress. That's the way it should run.
That is the way it should run. Last question I've got for you. I look at some of the talk about another nuclear deal with Iran. Any chance that happening, or is this bridge burnt?
I think the bridge was burnt down. I believe that President Biden, because he was part of the original Iran nuclear deal under President Obama, had every intention to reactivate this. The president was very aggressive, and then, of course, Iran changed hands into the power of the clerics again versus the Rouhani, who was the moderate. And why did that happen? It happened because the Iran nuclear deal was canceled. It was kept the first year by Trump, canceled the second. When it was canceled, the whole thing fell apart. And, of course, John Bolton was behind all that.
Yep.
Once he came in, Pompeo, boom, it was done. We all knew that. And so as a result, the clerics gained power in Iran by saying, you see what the West does, you see what America does, you need to trust us. You trusted the moderates. They did a deal with the devil. Look what the devil did to them. And so now it's all, over the place with centrifuges that can be, increased. And then what do we do? Do we militarily invade? Is that what we really would do?
No.
With Iran at this point in time? Do you drop a nuke? I don't think so. So President Biden gave it, I think, a great effort when he became president. I think right now this is some verbiage thrown out there, Rick, to see where it goes. But let's face it, there's a little bit too much going on, and you've got, Saudi Arabia and Israel that don't want this to happen, and they're doing a lot of things behind the scenes. So I just don't think it's going to go anywhere. I think the approach by the president's the correct one, trying to restart, the communication, but this one's pretty well damaged.
And ultimately, if I'm Iran, why would I deal with Biden when there's a possibility of Trump doing to me what he did to me with the deal with Obama? It just seems like a fool's errand.
Well, again, correct. And the original Iran nuclear deal, could we have done maybe some more with their missiles? Yes. Could a few other things have been done? Yes. Was the main part that we wanted to accomplish done? Yes, it was. And we did it with China and Russia and Europe and Iran, and the centrifuges were rolling back. Everything was good.
Yeah.
And so now trying to restart this because the bridge was dynamited, in the second term of Trump is it's a tough cause. The president's trying, but this one I wouldn't hold a lot of hope right now.
There you go. Bob, as always, great stuff. I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Rick.
Our good friend, former Ohio Congressman and political analyst Bob Ney. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith. And this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1929. That was the day that Vilio Rasval and Jani Voutilainen disappeared on their way to recruit workers at a bush camp during a strike in northwestern Ontario, Canada, near Thunder Bay. They were both Finnish Canadians. Vilio Rasval was an organizer for the Lumber Workers Industrial Union of Canada. The union included many Finnish lumber workers and had ties to the Canadian Communist Party. Jani Voutilainen was an experienced trapper. The two men never made it to their destination, the Pigeon Timber Company camp located north of Onion Lake. It was unknown what had happened to them until the next April. Voutilainen's body was found in shallow water at the edge of Onion Lake. A few days later, Rasval was found also drowned in a nearby creek that emptied into the lake. The Finnish workers blamed the deaths of the two men on the conservative Finnish camp boss, who oversaw the Onion Lake encampment. The coroner's autopsy ruled the deaths accidental drownings, but many remained unconvinced and suspected foul play. They questioned how an experienced trapper such as Voutilainen could fall through the ice and drown in such shallow water. Thousands attended the funeral for the martyrs. The debate over what happened to the two men continues to this day. An historical marker reads, quote, "The mystery surrounding the deaths of Rasval and Voutilainen endures, sustaining them in public memory as martyrs to the cause of organized labor." A headstone donated by the Thunder Bay and District Labor Council was erected in 1993 to honor the graves which had gone previously unmarked. The deaths of the two men traveling to organize workers remains a mystery of the Canadian labor movement to this day.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
I was reading an article about Joe Biden in Detroit the other day. Evidently, he visited a GM plant where they have built an EV Hummer, and there was him zipping around the parking lot. And I love the title that they've given him, the what was it, the car aficionado in chief. Because look, I mean, I gotta be honest. I would love to be able to drive some of these new electric vehicles. Like he's getting the kingly treatment around. I would love to be able to be at the front of this, where his policy is taking us. This is exciting stuff. And at the end of the day, sadly, there's only a handful of people holding up the possibility of what the future could be in this. Because look, corporate America, they've figured it out. Capitalism has already figured out that we're moving to electric vehicles. That's where the country's going. That's where popular support is going, and that's where the oil costs are going. Read the room, man. Now they're saying, look, we're gonna help fund some of this stuff. We're gonna give some tax credits for people to buy these vehicles, and when you do that, well, people are gonna buy them. I would, like I said, I'm waiting for that Ford Thunderbolt to come out, because one, they're cool as hell. My kid, my son is just fixated on the Teslas and some of the electric vehicles that they're coming out with. And then there are people who are actually buying Teslas, the Tesla motors, and putting them into old cars. There's going to be so much of that in the future, especially because of Biden's initiatives. We're going to start building infrastructure and charging stations all over the place. That's a good thing. That's helpful. And we've got to do it at a scale where, when things go wrong with it, they're going to get fixed. And it's not it broke down and now we can do nothing with it, or we pay through the nose to get it done. We've now got to get it to a sufficient scale to where it brings the costs down for everyone. But I'm concerned about it. I'm concerned about the fact that Joe Manchin has said, no, we're not gonna give any extra help to the union companies that are building this. The American automakers. And that's part of it. Part of it is helping here at home. And oh, by the way, if you want the extra tax credit, let your employees organize. Bargain with them in good faith. Some good news on the bargaining front. The John Deere workers are going back to work. They have ratified their agreement. And look, this is one of those things where, standing together and demanding more of your union is a good thing. And I think they did a great job. Good on them. Even with all of the push and all of the the spin and the union busting tactics that went into having anonymous sources saying no I don't want to be out here but I'm afraid, nonsense. These folks got a decent contract. It's going to help them lead better lives. This is a good thing. At least that's my view on it. Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast, the Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Make sure you follow us on social media at Rick Smith Show on Twitter. We do the Facebook thing, not so much, but we put stuff there for folks who do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, get the daily updates. Lots of great things. Get the podcast. Take the program wherever you go. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.